Good afternoon. Welcome to the LFS podcast this afternoon with me, Kevin Ferris. Great to have you with us again for another LFS podcast this week. We have a lot to talk about, including last night's Champions League action, the new format, how's it looking, and what do we feel about it all. 6 games last night, 6 to come tonight as well. Plus, we'll have a look back at last night's Carabao Cup action, of course, with the split weeks now. There's Carabao Cup action this week and next week. The same with European football this week and next week, so lots to get your teeth into. We'll talk about last night's Carabao Cup action, the big games, Man United's game, the Saints, Southampton and Everton, and also Preston Fulham as well, plus some big news stories from around the world of football. So lots to get through in the next however long. Thing is, these podcasts are so unpredictable how long they will be. You don't know how long I'm going to ramble for, but usually around 45 minutes to an hour. But if it's shorter to this week, you're in luck. Welcome to the LFS podcast. Thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. Don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on post notifications if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on audio platforms, which is available on Spotify, etc, do hit that follow button and do keep listening, because it does massively help. Right, thank you very much for joining us, and let's get underway then for this week's topics. And let's start with last night's Champions League, because there was certainly a lot to get through in last night's Champions League action. The first night, the new format in action for the very first time, albeit it didn't really seem very different. Albeit 6 Champions League games. It was great all round Europe, fabulous matches, 2 matches live here in LFS. Of course, last night Aston Villa's 3-0 win away at Young Boys, and Liverpool's 3-1 win in Milan against AC Milan. But also we had action from Munich, from Madrid, from Turin, from Lisbon as well. So lots of action for the recap on. And we're going to start this afternoon with the champions, because it wasn't all playing. We were going to start with the champions. Clearly, we're not. With the graphic that has come up on my screen, we're going to start with Bayern Munich. Actually, their huge victory over Dinamo Zagreb, the biggest in their history. Bayern Munich's Harry Kane scored 4 goals to become England's top scorer in the Champions League or European Cup history. There's that history stat, in a demolition of Dinamo Zagreb. His 4th, also known as the 3rd penalty of the game, he had a hat-trick of penalties. It was his 33rd Champions League goal, as he passed Wayne Rooney's old record of 30. So it was at 29 before the night started, ended up on 33. Incredible. The quadruple also marked his 50th, 51st, 52nd and 53rd Bayern goals in just 50 games for the club. Incredible. Of course, another London-born player, France winger Michael Olise, scored twice on his Champions League debut last night. There was more players that did score for Bayern than didn't score, let's be honest. Last night, Bayern are the first team to score 9 goals in a Champions League game, and Kane gave Bayern the lead with a penalty after Alexander Pavlovic was fouled, sending goalkeeper Ivan Nevesic the wrong way. Rafael Guerreiro scored a fantastic half volley before Elise, the summer signing from Palace, headed in Joshua Kimmich's cross. Bayern brought on Sven Ulrich for the injured Manuel Neuer at half-time, and he conceded twice in 5 minutes before touching the ball. Now, this was the key point last night. It was 3-0 to Bayern Munich at half-time. We thought, right, they're comfortable, they're in control of this game. Dinamo Zagreb, it's going to be a tough night for them. Little did we know what the second half had in store. But the first few minutes of the second half, Dinamo Zagreb got 2 goals out of nowhere. Bruno Petkovic and Takuya Ogiwara beating, of course, Sven Ulrich twice. That brought us back to 3-2. Then we kind of thought, maybe is there comeback on, or are Dinamo Zagreb gonna shock Bayern? Well, clearly not. In the end, Bayern took control again. Kane scoring a rebound after Joshua Kimmich's shot was saved, and Olise slotting into an empty net made it 5. England's Kane then scored his 2nd spot kick after a dubious handball decision from the VAR, and he netted a hat-trick of spot kicks and his 4th goal overall after Alphonso Davies was fouled. Leroy Sané came off the bench to smash in from 20 yards, and Leon Goretzka headed in their 9th. Jamal Musiala, Serge Gnabry and Kane also had goals disallowed for offside. So if they had all of their goals, all the times they put the ball in the net, allowed, they would have scored 12 goals, Bayern Munich, on the night. That was incredible. It is the joint second highest scoring Champions League game ever, level with Monaco's 8-3 win over Deportivo La Coruña in 2003. The record remains by Borussia Dortmund's 8-4 win over Legia Warsaw in 2016. Of course, a total of 12 goals in that game, only 11 there last night, only, as I say. As well. Kane has scored 9 goals in 5 games for Vincent Kompany's Bayern this season, also hitting a hat-trick in Saturday's 6-1 win at Holstein Kiel. Certainly free scoring are Bayern at the moment, and they certainly take up top spot in the Champions League table now, of course, with a +7 goal difference. And I said, post-match last night, I said, goal difference is more important than ever before. And points, of course, with this being a league table, to try and get into the top 8. So Bayern already have that big advantage upon their rivals, that 7-goal advantage that they already have. And that could be, albeit it all depends how many points you accumulate, but it could ultimately be the difference in the end, albeit still 7 games to go. But it could, if they go on to be battling for that top 8 Bayern, which I expect them to be. A +7 goal difference in one game alone could be very, very huge for them. And that is a big result, of course, as I said, the most goals that Bayern have ever scored, or any team has ever scored in a Champions League game. No one's ever scored 9, but Bayern are the first to do so. So, that was Bayern Munich's win. And actually, if we look at the stats just quickly, because I love a good stat, and I love a good XG stat. Bayern had 29 shots, 19 on target, and an XG of 6.25. That is absolutely astronomical. 6.25. So based on the chances they created, they should have at least 6 goals, which is as rare as it comes. XG that high is incredibly rare. Incredibly rare. It just goes to show how good Bayern's performance was. Next up, we will go to the champions. We got them in the wrong order there. Never mind. We're going to talk about both of them anyway. And let's talk about that man on the screen. In Real Madrid's Endrick became their youngest Champions League goal scorer, while Kylian Mbappe also netted for the holders in a hard-fought home win over Stuttgart, the German side. At 18 years and 58 days, the Brazilian Endrick broke the record set by club legend Raul in 1995, who scored against Ferencváros, aged 18 years and 113 days. So by around 50 days, Endrick became their youngest ever Champions League goal scorer. The striker joined the club this summer from Palmeiras, had already become the youngest player to score on his La Liga debut for Madrid in the 21st century after coming off the bench against Rayo Valladolid. After replacing Jude Bellingham in the 80th minute at the Bernabeu, Endrick wrapped up the points for the last kick of the game. France forward Mbappe, who was making his debut in Europe's elite competition for Los Blancos, opened the scoring 20 seconds into the second half. Aurelien Tchouameni's sweeping pass found the run of Rodrigo on the right, and the Brazilian unselfishly squared the ball for Mbappe to tap it in. Former Brighton forward Dennis Undav made it tense inside the Bernabeu when he expertly headed in a deserved equaliser in the 68th minute. Carlo Ancelotti's side needed an 83rd minute header from Antonio Rudiger to retake the lead, and then, of course, Endrick wrapping up the game. And then, ultimately, really, if I had to really recap this game and talk about this game as a whole, I would say Real Madrid weren't at their very best last night, albeit their 2 new signings scored the 3 goals, but overall, or their 2 new signings, getting goals on the night. But to be honest, Stuttgart gave them a good game. At half time, I made the point at half time last night that the game was quite level. Stuttgart had more possession, they had created more big chances, they had a better XG rating, and they had also equalled the amount of shots from Real Madrid. Both had 9 shots on target, and Stuttgart had more shots, or 9 shots. Both had 9 shots, Stuttgart with more on target. But, Stuttgart were well in the game in that first half, and found themselves just at 0-0 at half time. Was exactly kind of deserved from a Stuttgart point of view at half time, and then getting back equal in the second half, albeit Real Madrid upped the level in the second half and were the better side in the end and probably edged it overall. But I think it wasn't the most convincing performance from the champions. I have to be honest. There were spells in the game where Stuttgart were the better side, were threatening, were pushing. When they got their equaliser, Stuttgart were the better team. They were in a good spell in the game. And to do that in such a difficult stadium as the Bernabeu is, and against the whole reigning champions of the Champions League, is not an easy task. And full credit to Stuttgart for battling through, but also, as I said, the quality of Real Madrid just shone through on the night when you've got the likes of Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Endrick, Antonio Rudiger, etc., etc., etc. I mean, you could talk for hours about the amount of quality that Real Madrid have both on the field and on the bench as options. You know, it's quite remarkable how much talent that Real Madrid have, and they may become, you know, an iconic side in Europe for the next few years. But their first game as a kind of a team, still looking to gel, but you can certainly see the raw qualities of their players massively shown last night. No doubt about their quality, one single bit. So a 3-1 win for the champions. Now to a 3-1 win for Arne Slot's Liverpool in his first Champions League game in charge of the club. Accrued to victory. Liverpool bouncing back from that 1-0 defeat against Nottingham Forest at the weekend. Liverpool claimed an assured victory at AC Milan on their Champions League return to firmly bounce back, as I said, from Saturday's shock defeat by Nottingham Forest. The Reds were stunned on the break inside 3 minutes when AC Milan winger Christian Pulisic found the net with a driven strike across goal. But Arne Slot's side responded with a dominant performance, and after Mo Salah hit the bar, defender Ibrahim Konate levelled with a stooping 23rd minute header from Trent Alexander-Arnold's free kick. Salah struck the bar again before Virgil van Dijk completed the turnaround shortly before half-time when he met Kostas Tsimikas' corner with a close-range header. The win was wrapped up in the 67th minute when Cody Gakpo ended an electric run by squaring the ball to Dominik Szoboszlai for a tap-in. Liverpool also gave a brief debut to summer signing Federico Chiesa, who replaced Salah in the 93rd minute. A win for Arne Slot's Liverpool, their first game back in the Champions League, obviously not in the Champions League last year. Liverpool, the new format, of course. For the Reds, and Arne Slot's birthday last night, so the Liverpool manager got a bit of a birthday present from his players. And I have to say, AC Milan, albeit they scored inside 3 minutes, but that was probably the best moment they had in the whole game. And, you know, I commentated on the game last night. I watched the full 95 minutes or whatever it was of the game. About 90% of that game, Liverpool were on top with a much the better side, massively in control of the game, dominating possession, keeping the ball in Milan's final third, really dominating the ball. And it was a really professional performance from Liverpool. You know, going 1-0 down in a European game after coming off a defeat at the weekend, a shock defeat at home, that really can battle with the mentality of a side, especially this new side. You know, albeit a lot of them played with each other last season, but under a different manager, under a different kind of style, in a sense, slightly different tactics this time round, a new manager, a new regime. It can kind of put a spanner in the works, really, kind of make it a bit of an upset for Liverpool if they kind of were rattled by that. But you saw kind of when they conceded that strong leadership with the team, and I think that's important with a new manager and a new kind of start at a club, is having that leadership group, that consistency, that kind of calmness and composure in a side. You know, we saw Virgil van Dijk, the captain, just kind of calm his players down and say, don't worry about it, just let's go and play our football, and we can show what we've got on offer. And they did that. I think Liverpool were absolutely fantastic last night. I didn't watch the game against Nottingham Forest at the weekend, but from all of the games that I've watched of Liverpool, all of their 4 wins, they have been absolutely fantastic in those games. Albeit the shock home defeat to Nottingham Forest, clearly they weren't at their level at the weekend, otherwise they would have beaten Nottingham Forest. But there looked to be no problems last night, albeit one-off game, albeit. You know, you can't really kind of take it as a sample size just yet, but 5 games, 4 wins out of 5, start the season, considering you've played away at the San Siro, at AC Milan. You've played away at Old Trafford in Manchester United, scoring 3 goals in both games and dismantling both teams technically, and then wins against Ipswich and Brentford on those occasions. The Nottingham Forest game can be just an anomaly for Liverpool. Doesn't need to be built into this big kind of moment of, oh look, Arne Slot, it's going wrong for him already. I think Liverpool kind of put that to bed, and any sort of arguments about that right to bed last night, because the response from the Liverpool players was I think, quite remarkable, quite kind of experienced, but also that youthful exuberance and excitement and energy about the side. I think the midfield were absolutely fantastic. I think Ryan Gravenberch again showing kind of this new role that he's been put in, how good he is. His raw qualities in that role is fantastic. McAllister did well. Szoboszlai, very dynamic, box to box, up the field, helping the attack, driving Liverpool forward, but also tracking back, getting back, helping out his defensive midfielders and his defenders in defending. And that's another point I want to make on Liverpool, is how they defend. I think that's what I've been most impressed with. Yes, they've scored quite a number of goals and really good goals, but the way they have defended in their games so far, I think has been quite fantastic. Last night they held Milan in that first half to just 2 shots in the whole of the first half in their home stadium, considering they scored a goal from one of those. That is incredible. And then in the second half, Milan did have a little spell before the end of the game, but I think Liverpool knew they were 3-1 up. They were just managing the game and kind of took their foot off the pedal a slight bit, because Milan had 1 or 2 good chances before the end of the game, but nothing of real great note out of it. To be honest, it didn't look like at any point other than the first goal for Milan that they looked to be scoring any more than 1 goal. I think Liverpool defended really solidly. I think Van Dijk and Konate both up front scoring goals, but also defending as well, were absolutely fantastic. I think both fullbacks and Tsimikas and Alexander-Arnold did their jobs really, really well. The midfield covered well. I think the attackers as well. And when we talk about teams that want to press high and get forward, and these dynamic attackers, we talk sometimes about how some are reluctant to track back, and I think Arne Slot, in one of his interviews, I heard him say, there's no point in trying to run forward all the time. It's about doing your defensive duties as well, and if you're not going to do that, then there's no point in you being in my team. And I think that's important as well. Mo Salah and Cody Gakpo on either side, the wide players getting back, helping out the defence, and I think as a team, Liverpool look really strong, really compact, really controlled, really comfortable, but also really exciting to watch at the same time. And it's that fine balance between a side that's really solid and controlled at the back, but also a side that's really exciting and entertaining to watch. And I think that balance is really hard to find at times, where you're really solid defensively, but also really free scoring up front. Usually sides are either one or the other. Very rarely is that balance ever found, and both come into fruition. Even only the best sides in the world find that, and I think Liverpool could become again one of the best sides in Europe, if not the world, if they continue on this vein. But of course, it's only 5 games. It's still very early in Arne Slot's reign, but of course, a great response to their defeat at the weekend, and I think each and every player played their part last night. I think it was a really good game and a really good performance from Liverpool. So they got off to a win. Speaking of getting off to a win, it was a historic night for Aston Villa. Their first ever officially Champions League game after the competition was created in 1992. Villa's last performance in a European competition, or the highest ranked European competition, was the European Cup back in 1982, where they were beaten by Juventus, knocked out in the quarterfinals, when they were the holders. They were the champions of Europe the last time they were in a European competition, or in the Champions League, or European Cup as it was known back then. They were the champions of Europe, and I think Villa kind of struggled to kind of battle with the occasion early in the moments. Of course, they played the Conference League last season. They got to the Conference League semis last season. But I think a very different kind of performance from Aston Villa last night. They marked their return to European football European football's top club competition after a 41-year absence with a thoroughly deserved victory over Swiss champions Young Boys. Unai Emery's team took time to settle over on the artificial surface in Bern, but went in front through Yuri Tielemans, who finished off a well-worked corner routine with a driven finish into the far corner. Villa were gifted a second by some calamitous defending from the home side, with Ollie Watkins intercepting Mohamed Ali Kamara's pass towards goalkeeper David van Balmus, and Jacob Ramsey firing in off the inside of the posts. The hosts were spared further punishment before half-time by the VAR, who disallowed Ollie Watkins' powerful effort for handball. Silver Ganvula and Filip Ugrinic forced saves out of Emi Martinez in the second half, and substitute John Duran had a left-foot finish ruled out for handball against Amadou Onana. But the Belgian midfielder's low effort put the seal on a comfortable evening for Emery's side. The visitors wore black armbands in Switzerland in memory of former striker and 1982 European Cup winner Gary Shaw, who passed away on Monday from injury sustained in a heavy fall. An image of Shaw was displayed on the big screen before kick-off, with both sets of fans taking part in a period of applause. A quite kind of historic moment for Aston Villa. You know, we talk about it, it's a 3-0 win against the side they probably should be beating, but we talk about the occasion and the whole kind of idea around this for Villa. Their first big European game in 41 years in either the European Cup or Champions League. And as I said early on, they struggled to kind of get to grips with that. I think the occasion kind of got to the players early on in the first 20 minutes or so, but once they started to grapple with the ball, they started to get in more control and actually get the ball further up the field and get their attackers involved. You know, we didn't really see much of Ollie Watkins, Jacob Ramsey, John McGinn, Morgan Rogers in those first 20 minutes, and I think as Villa kind of settled into the game, kind of relaxed in the game, I think they became more comfortable, more controlled, but also much more threatening to Young Boys. And I think Yuri Tielemans' goal is a perfect example of a beautiful set piece that Villa worked on. You know, a short corner taken, play to John McGinn with a lovely cross. And Yuri Tielemans, the marking from the home side was absolutely atrocious, to be honest. Yuri Tielemans given mainly about a third of the 18-yard box to himself. And he put in a nice strike right across goal to score Villa's first ever official Champions League goal. Of course, and Yuri Tielemans certainly celebrating that one, as you can see on the screen. The second, as I said, by Jacob Ramsey. I couldn't get over how bad this defending was. I said it on the commentary. It was dreadful. It's probably one of the worst bits of defending I've ever seen for something that turns out to be a goal. I mean, I don't know what Kamara is thinking and passing back to his keeper in that tight space. He defends it really well initially, and you think a centre back in his own 6-yard box, don't pass it back to your keeper. Just boot it long when you're under pressure. I mean, it was a very crowded 18-yard box, about 12 or 13 players in and around that area, and you just think, just get it clear and reset. But he decides to pass it 3 yards back to his goalkeeper, who's under pressure from Ollie Watkins, albeit the referee, if it hadn't been a goal, would have given a penalty. Van Bulmus had to foul Ollie Watkins, who tried to nick the ball away as it was passed back to him. So it would have been a penalty, if not a goal. But the sheer kind of ineptitude of the defending was quite remarkable, to be honest. And then Jacob Ramsey gifted that goal before it was 3 later on in the game. They had to do it 3 times before they did get a third goal. Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins had his goal ruled out. I think that was a bit of a mistake by VAR. I've seen it back. I've seen it back in real time, and I don't think it was a handball. I think it hit Ollie Watkins' chest, but VAR deemed it a handball, no goal. The second one that was disallowed was certainly handball. Amadou Onana did handle the ball in the build-up to the goal before. Amadou Onana got the revenge for Aston Villa. He had his what would have been the third goal disallowed from John Duran, who's in great form, by the way. John Duran, incredible performance again from him. Probably should have had that goal, but ultimately the handball ruled it out. Of course, scored that late winner against Everton at the weekend for Aston Villa. He had his chance ruled out, but Amadou Onana made up for that handball by putting in one of his own, and it was a really nice finish from distance from Amadou Onana. I think Villa were well above the level of Young Boys. I think they were well capable in that game. I think the occasion slightly got to them, as I said, in the first 20 minutes, and I think that they really struggled with that. But once they settled into the game, I think Villa were by far the better side and deserved the 3 points, no doubt about it. Young Boys did have a few half chances, but nothing of real kind of note to worry about for Aston Villa. A clean sheet, 3 points, 3 goals. I mean, is there a more perfect way to start your Champions League campaign? I don't think so. It's not going to get any easier, though, for Villa. They've Bayern Munich up next, so it's not going to get any easier for them. Elsewhere, before we move on to the Carabao Cup, I just want to mention the other two results. Juventus winning 3-1 against PSV. Juventus officially getting the first goal of the new format of the Champions League at Kenan Yildiz, and certainly it may be the first goal of the new format, but it was an absolute screamer. It was fabulous. I mean, the amount of goals that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 days that have been absolutely out of this world has been mental. And Kenan Yildiz's goal was absolutely fabulous. Certainly one for the history books and certainly one for the highlights reel of the Champions League overall ever in history. It was an absolute wonder of a finish, and Weston McKennie and Nicolas Gonzalez added a second and a third for Juventus, who beat PSV Eindhoven by 3-1, and Sporting had a winning start to the campaign, a 2-0 win over Lille, 10-man Lille, Victor Gyökeres and Zeno de Bast. And Zeno de Bast's goal was an absolute cracker as well. Fabulous goals on the night that sealed the deal for Sporting. No draws as of yet. All 6 games ended in a win for any side, really. 4 home wins and 2 away wins from match day 1, and match day 1 of the Champions League continues. We'll tell you about that a bit later on in the show. Moving on to the Carabao Cup. Carabao Cup action last night. 3rd round games, of course, split over 2 weeks due to Champions League and Europa League. And our Europa League teams in England would have been are in action this midweek. Manchester United certainly got their 3rd round game off with a cracker. Their entrance into the competition, certainly a game to remember for United this season. Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho and veteran midfielder Christian Eriksen all scored twice, while Brazilian winger Antony converted a first half spot kick in what turned out to be a rout by the end. It was United's biggest win since they hammered Southampton 9-0 in February 2021, when the stands were still empty due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was certainly a night to remember as far as Erik ten Hag's tenure is concerned. United had not previously scored 5 under the Dutchman, and the goals that got them there were before Eriksen's brace was even more reason for celebration. Ten Hag said after the game, for the team, this is the perfect night. We did everything we planned, win to reach the next round, scored some great goals, entertained the fans and worked on our game model, so we are happy. Although the visiting supporters were noisy in the backing of Barnsley, Darrell Clarke's side were completely outclassed. The most notable moment came in the first half when Clarke himself produced a brilliant piece of skill to control a ball that had been fizzed towards the touchline after the whistle had gone. Even the home fans applauded that one. But of course, United were also able to give a first start for £50 million midfielder Manuel Ugarte, of course. And a night to remember for Manchester United. It's not often, and I don't think many times on this podcast, that I've actually mentioned that Man United have had a good week. And they have. A 3-0 win away at Southampton at the weekend, and now a 7-0 win at home. It's probably the happiest Man United fans have been in about a decade. It's actually quite refreshing to not be coming on and complaining and arguing and ripening about Manchester United and their terrible football. But they scored 10 goals without reply, albeit against League One Barnsley and against a Premier League side that has scored just 1 goal this season. But if you can't be happy with any sort of win, don't be happy at all. And it seems at the minute, Man United fans, they need every single bit of positivity they can get. A 7-0 win would certainly do that, and it did last night. I can't say the same about the red side of the red side of Manchester had a good night, but the blue side of Merseyside did not. Southampton did get their first win of the season. Goalkeeper Alex McCarthy was the hero in the penalty shootout, saving Ashley Young's penalty in sudden death as Southampton edged past Everton to reach the fourth round of the Carabao Cup. In a battle of the Premier League's two sides yet to pick up a point, the match went to a shootout after a 1-1 draw in normal time. The first 11 penalties all found the back of the net, but Young's strike was saved by McCarthy, leaving the travelling Southampton fans with a joyous long trip back to the south coast. Saints boss Russell Martin said, "I'm really proud of the players. I understand what we are asking them to do is so tough, but they do it with so much courage, conviction and intensity. I'm really happy. We responded brilliantly to a setback. They stuck at it, puffed their chests out and were aggressive. I saw a lot of stuff that I liked." Captain for the night, Abdoulaye Doucouré, headed in from close range after the Saints defenders failed to clear a corner to give the home side the ideal start. But the visitors levelled soon after with their first real opportunity of the contest as centre-back Taylor Howard-Bellis rose highest to plant home a thumping header from Charlie Taylor's pinpoint cross. So 1-1 inside 90 minutes, and the penalty shootout saw Everton knocked out of the competition. Everton are yet to win any game domestically other than their second round performance in the Carabao Cup. They have lost all 4 league games and are knocked out of the Carabao Cup. They have only league football to worry about between now and the new year. So 3.5 months of happy Everton fans, I'm guessing, incoming. At the moment, what is going on with Everton? Can't even pick up a win at home against the side who are worse than them in the Premier League. Now, you'd think, who is worse than Everton in the Premier League considering their start? Southampton are as bad. Really, both sides have lost all 4 league games to start the season. It was pretty dismal from those two. I expected it to be a draw. I didn't expect Southampton to win, but there we are. They did. They won on penalties, and Ashley Young having his penalty saved. It was a good night for penalty shootouts. So Everton knocked out, and another Premier League side knocked out as well. A shock one, as Championship side Preston stunned Premier League Fulham, winning 16-15 on penalties. Incredible. 31 penalties is the longest shootout in Carabao Cup history. Ryan Ledson scored the winning penalty in the third round after Timothy Castagna blazed over the bar for Fulham. Fulham's Jorge Cuenca and Preston's Cian Kessler-Hayden had earlier seen their misses cancelled out. Preston's success meant the shootout eclipsed the previous record set by Derby County and Carlisle in 2016 when the Rams won 14-13 in a shootout. Paul Heckingbottom said, "I've never been involved in a shootout like that. As it wore on, 8-8, 9-9, it made me more determined to win it because of the effort and commitment put in to get the penalties. We were the team, certainly in injury time, trying to get the game to penalties. It was a great atmosphere. We look forward to the draw, but we have to park it. We have other things to focus on now." Of course, Ledson put Preston ahead after 35 minutes when his first time strike from the edge of the box nestled into the bottom corner. Kessler-Hayden had a low diving header brilliantly saved by away goalkeeper Stephen Benda as the home side impressed. Reece Nelson scored his first Fulham goal to level the tie just after the hour mark, but it was Fulham to be sent home. Remember, Fulham were in last season's semi-final of the Carabao Cup, but aren't going to get any further than the third round this year. It's very rare that any team goes back-to-back in good performances in the Cup, and it looks like Fulham and Middlesbrough, who were 2 of our 4 semi-finalists last year, both knocked out at this stage. Middlesbrough were actually knocked out in the second round. So they were. So no Middlesbrough or Fulham to progress. But not worrying about that. That was amongst our Carabao Cup results last night. I'll just run you through them. The other ones, Stoke needed penalties to beat Fleetwood. It was actually an awful penalty shootout. 2-1 penalty shootout win for Stoke saw them through to the 4th round. Sheffield Wednesday continued their good form after beating Blackpool by a goal to 0. Brentford put 3 past 10-man Leyton Orient to win 3-1. Everton, as I said, knocked out on penalties. Fulham also knocked out on penalties. Crystal Palace needed a 2-1 win over QPR to progress in that London derby. And Manchester United won by 7-0. That were all the Carabao Cup games last night. Tonight there are 2 more Carabao Cup games, which sees Brighton take on Wolves and Coventry face Tottenham. So those sides in action tonight. Right, let's move on to stories elsewhere then, before we get ready to leave you this afternoon, because moving away from action on the field, some action off the field as well. 2 stories to leave you with, one very, very sad one, which we will get to in a moment. But first, to Roma, who have sacked manager Daniele De Rossi just 4 matches into the new Serie A season. Roma, who hired De Rossi to replace Jose Mourinho at the Stadio Olimpico in January, have been unable to win any of their Serie A matches this season, drawing 3 and losing at home to Empoli last month. Roma are currently 16th in the Serie A standings, following their 1-1 draw at Genoa on Sunday. A club statement read, "The club's decision is taken in the interest of the team to be able to promptly resume the desired path at a time when the season is still at its beginning." To Daniele, who will always be at home in the Giallorossi club, heartfelt thanks for the work carried out in these months with passion and dedication. Well, De Rossi's tenure at Roma started superbly. In his first 11 league matches, Roma lost just once, picking up 26 points out of a possible 33. That run took Roma from 9th to 5th in the table. They also reached the semi-finals of the Europa League, being knocked out, of course, by Leverkusen. But a 6th place finish last season saw them qualify again for this season's Europa League. Among Roma's fixtures in Europe this season are a trip to Tottenham in November. This summer, Roma signed last season's La Liga top goalscorer Artem Dovbyk from Girona, as well as Mats Hummels on a free transfer as well. So a couple of big signings in the summer, but not the start that De Rossi or Roma would have wanted to start the season. As I said, 16th in the league, having been able to win any of their 4 games to start the season, drawing 3 and losing 1 of those games. So not a good start to the season, which sees De Rossi sacked by Roma. Who's going to be next in that job? Jose Mourinho seemed to get on well with the Roma fans, but of course dismissed in January. And De Rossi now dismissed 8 months later. Right, moving on to our final story, and to really bring down the tone, and I do apologise for ending on this, but this had to be talked about. Liverpool did win last night, but it wasn't all fun and games and happy stories for Liverpool. A Liverpool fan was knocked down and killed in Italy, where he had gone to watch his team play in the Champions League. Philip Dooley, 51, from Liverpool, was struck by a vehicle in Bergamo in the early hours of Tuesday morning, the Merseyside police have said. The force said its officers have informed Mr Dooley's next of kin in Merseyside and were helping the police in Italy. 2 men who witnessed the incident are also helping Italian police with their investigation. The lifelong Liverpool fan had travelled to Italy for Tuesday's game against AC Milan. According to the club, Liverpool players wore black armbands to pay tribute to Mr Dooley, while representatives from both teams placed flowers on what would have been his seat for the Champions League clash. In a statement, Liverpool Football Club released this last night. "We are deeply saddened by the tragic passing of our supporter Philip Dooley following a road traffic accident in Bergamo in the early hours of this morning. Philip was a lifelong Liverpool fan who travelled to the game to be at tonight's Champions League game against AC Milan. Our staff in Milan are working with the local police and consulate and continue to provide support to other fans impacted by this devastating incident. The thoughts and prayers of everyone connected to the club are with Philip's family, friends and fellow supporters at this extremely difficult time. Rest in peace, Philip." And of course, LFS and I personally kind of echo those statements of praise, prayers and thoughts for Philip and his family and friends at this very sad time. It is a horrible, horrible story to what was an almost perfect night for Liverpool, albeit on the field, but off the field, a night certainly that has been tainted. And rest in peace, Philip Dooley, of course. Right. That is this week's LFS podcast. Sorry to leave it on that note, but that story had to be mentioned and we had to talk about it. this afternoon. That is this week's LFS podcast. Don't forget, coming up later tonight, we watch Manchester City take on Inter Milan in a repeat of the 2023 Champions League final. That's tonight from 8 o'clock at the Etihad, plus live updates from all of the Champions League games. Then tomorrow, match day 1 concludes with more Thursday action as Atalanta take on Arsenal. Atalanta, the Europa League champions, they take on Arsenal tomorrow 8 p.m. in Bergamo in that stadium, and that will be a real nice battle to watch. Three of the four English sides all facing Italian opposition on match day 1. Arsenal trip to Atalanta tomorrow at 8 o'clock. That's on LFS as well. That's it for this week. As I mentioned, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss any of the LFS podcasts or any of our live streams of our live match watch-along commentaries. For now, thanks very much for watching, and we'll be back next week once again. Bye-bye.